Opposites attract. Theresa May's upbeat assessment ahead of her meeting with Donald Trump. The Prime Minister will be the first world leader to come face-to-face with the new president. She's optimistic about building a trade deal, but also facing pressure to tackle Trump over torture. Also tonight, the Brexit Bill sparks a new battle inside Labour. The economy keeps on growing, defying fears of a post-Brexit downturn. And finally solved, the mystery of the body on Saddleworth Moor.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Theresa May clearly has high hopes of her meeting with Donald Trump. Opposites attract, she said tonight, as she flew into the United States, determined to forge a renewed special relationship with that country. Well, Mrs May is the first world leader to meet President Trump. European leaders seem to be keeping a pointed distance, and Mexico's president has cancelled his planned trip. But it all comes as Mr Trump reiterates his determination to build a wall along the Mexican border and has even endorsed torture. Our Washington correspondent Robert Moore reports.
The Prime Minister left Downing Street earlier today for this high-stakes mission to do business with an American president many Europeans regard with growing alarm. Whether this race to the White House is a diplomatic coup or a significant foreign policy mistake is currently a major debate here. Like Mrs May, Donald Trump has just arrived in Philadelphia after his first trip as president aboard Air Force One. Both leaders are addressing a Republican Party conference in the city. Donald Trump and Theresa May will then meet formally in the Oval Office tomorrow morning.
Are we better than this? Yes!
Protesters gathered in the centre of the city to make their frustration known with the direction of this presidency. On the back of the large anti-Trump demonstrations of the weekend, being the first foreign leader into the White House since the inauguration will not play well with all Americans. Plenty of Republicans in America and Conservatives in Britain still hope for a return to the Reagan-Thatcher years, and they see a post-Brexit Britain as being in pole position to strike a trade deal with the US.
And I think that there is a great desire on the part of the Trump team to have a close relationship with Great Britain. And I think they made it clear during the Brexit fight that where Obama was saying, if you vote for Brexit, we'll put you to the back of the line, which I would have thought he might have been offended by. Trump said, look, if you vote for Brexit, I'm going to try to work with you. So.
One former British ambassador to Washington says that when the Prime Minister enters the White House tomorrow, she must not surrender UK values in pursuit of the special relationship.
I would hope that on some of the issues that are really important to Britain in terms of values or national interest, that she will stand firm. It's going to be important that she says firmly what we think about NATO and a number of other issues.
Does torture work? And the answer was yes.
This presidency, with comments like that and after a series of controversial executive orders, appears to be outside of the mainstream in the eyes of many Europeans. So it's far from clear that being the first leader into this Oval Office is really the prize that Downing Street wanted. Yeah, it's very revealing indeed that the Mexican president, who was scheduled to be here next week, has just cancelled that visit, outraged over Trump's immigration policies and outraged too over the construction of that wall on the southern border. So Mrs May be feeling a little lonely because, as far as we can tell, no other world leader has yet scheduled a visit to meet with President Trump.
OK, Robert Moore in Washington, thank you. And the president is giving a speech right now to leading Republicans in Philadelphia. Here he is. He's been telling them he'll be conducting lots of one-to-one trade deals. Theresa May will be speaking there a little later tonight. And our political editor, Robert Peston, is travelling with her, and he joins us from Philadelphia. Robert, Mrs May very, very upbeat ahead of her meeting.
So I'm here in Philadelphia, where the Prime Minister has come to the Republicans' retreat to deliver a message that she wants to reinforce the so-called special relationship between Britain and America. But when we chatted with her on her plane on the way over, what was really striking is the sharpness of the divisions between our Prime Minister and Donald Trump. For example, his overnight remarks that he wants to allow the security services to torture potential terrorist suspects. She said categorically Britain condemns torture, and if Donald Trump were to reintroduce torture, well, that would make it extremely difficult for our security services to work with their security services. Donald Trump wants to move the US embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. She said she did not want our embassy to move. That said, she thinks that she can sell Donald Trump a message that the two of us, the two countries working together, can make the West great again. She's obviously listened to his inauguration speech. This is the sort of thing that he loves, but my goodness, it's going to be a difficult set of conversations when she meets him in the White House tomorrow.
Robert Peston with the Republicans and Mrs May in Philadelphia there. As the Prime Minister was crossing the Atlantic to meet Mr Trump, the Brexit Bill was being presented to Parliament. It was short, as the government had promised, but its effect could cut deep, especially for the Labour Party leader, Jeremy Corbyn, who today insisted all his MPs support it. But frontbencher Tulip Siddiq has just resigned, and she may not be the last, as our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
So after all the political argument, here it is. One short bill taking Britain out of the EU. It says the Prime Minister may notify under Article 50 of the Treaty on European Union the United Kingdom's intention to withdraw from the EU. In the House of Commons, it was introduced in just a few seconds.
Presentation of Bill. Mr. Secretary David Davis.
European Union notification of withdrawal bill.
And that was it. Yet it has already sparked a resignation from Labour's front bench. Jeremy Corbyn confirmed today that he would order his MPs to vote for Article 50.
We will put out a statement today to our members that we want them to vote for Article 50. I fully understand the pressures and issues that members are under. Those who represent Leave constituencies and those who represent Remain constituencies.
One of those is Tulip Siddiq. Today she resigned as a shadow minister so that she could vote against Brexit, as she told us she would do on Monday.
It will be unfortunate to lose my shadow ministerial position, but if that's the price I have to pay to represent my constituents in Westminster, that's what I'm here for.
Despite Boris Johnson's best efforts, Norwich also voted Remain in the referendum. Today, voters there were divided on how MPs should approach the Brexit bill.
I think the country's already voted and the MPs are there to carry out our wishes. Our wishes are clear, so they should abide by that.
It's all been a terrible mistake, so I think the MPs should go with what they believe.
But their MP, Clive Lewis, says he'll vote for the Brexit bill, even though he doesn't really want to. This tiny bill is already giving Labour a massive headache. But that doesn't mean it's going to be a pain-free process for the government. They want to rush this tiny bill through Parliament in double quick time to meet their own self-imposed deadline of the end of March. Labour want to make 7 changes to this. The SNP are talking about 50. I think the government will manage to do it in time, but there could be a few hairy moments along the way.
OK, Carl Dinnan in Westminster, thank you. Well, before the referendum, we were warned Brexit could trigger a recession. But today, we learned that since June, the economy has actually performed even better than before the vote. In the last 3 months of the year, the economy grew by 0.6%. That's thanks to consumer spending and higher manufacturing output. And over the year as a whole, it grew by 2%. And there were other positive signs too, with car production approaching record highs. But the falling pound is hurting them and other businesses too, as our business editor, Joel Hills, reports.
No one makes more cars in Britain than Jaguar Land Rover. The company urged us not to leave the EU, so did the rest of the industry. But 6 months on from a referendum that didn't go their way, and everything looks rather rosy.
Here at Solihull today,
we've got the guys working 24 hours a day, 5 days a week, 3 shifts. The same thing is true of Halewood, and Castle Bromwich is also in remarkably rude health. So we've not missed a beat, quite frankly.
Last year, 1.7 million cars rolled off British production lines, the highest number for 17 years. 1.3 million of them were for export, most of those to the European Union, which of course we're leaving. The amount of money invested by car companies in Britain fell sharply last year, suggesting they're waiting to see if the government can get the free trade deal with the EU it says it can. This Range Rover is made in Britain in the truest sense. Most parts of this car are sourced locally, but the wider British car industry imports most of the components it needs. And those components have become more expensive because the pound has fallen in value since the referendum. And that is causing a financial headache for some companies. The man who used to run Vauxhall and General Motors' European business told me it's tougher for companies than the headlines suggest.
Pretty much everybody is losing money selling cars in this country because the pound has gone down so quickly. It's not been possible to raise prices to offset that. So car manufacturers, all of them, are suffering at the moment.
The wider economy has defied the gloomy forecasts thanks to consumer spending. Britain has shopped its way through Brexit uncertainty.
A strong economy going into the period when we will be negotiating our future relationship with the European Union is very good news for Britain, a very strong signal of the strong prospects that we have for the future.
The Brexit car crash many predicted hasn't come to pass, but then we haven't Brexited yet. The pound is down and prices are rising. It's too soon to say we're in the clear. Joel Hills, ITV News.
Hundreds have paid their respects at the funeral of a British soldier killed in Iraq. The death of Lance Corporal Scott Hetherington from Middleton in Greater Manchester is still under investigation by the Ministry of Defence. They've described it as a tragic accident. And the comedian Rory McGrath has been given a suspended jail sentence after pleading guilty to harassing a former lover. The TV star began hounding the married woman when she ended their 5-year relationship. Mr. McGrath's wife was with him in court. Now, the mystery behind the identity of the man found dead on Saddleworth Moor more than a year ago has finally been solved. Greater Manchester Police say he was a 67-year-old called David Litton who travelled from Pakistan. But many questions remain, including why he went there and how he died, as Damon Green reports.
A beauty spot at the edge of the Peake district, the final resting place of a man who, it seems, came here to die. He brought no belongings with him, nothing that carried his name, and for 13 months his identity was a mystery, until today. These were the last moving images of a man, possibly in his 70s, at a London Underground station. All that was known is that he brought a single rail ticket for a rural station at the edge of the Pennines, and when he got there, stopped at this pub for directions to the top of the mountain.
Brought him to the front door, I showed him which way to go, I explained which way to go, and he wasn't dressed for the occasion, so I said to him that you won't get there and back in what's left of the daylight.
A man who began his journey near Heathrow, not dressed for winter. It was where detectives had to start. A metal plate found inserted in his left leg and a bottle of medicine found on his body linked him to Pakistan. After intensive investigation, police found he'd flown into London from Pakistan 2 days earlier. They then had to search through reams of passenger flight lists to track down a name. The name, David Litton, a Londoner who'd lived in Lahore for the last 9 years.
It's been a long investigation, and it's taken us to numerous countries around the world, and finally I think we're happy that we've got the right result.
On a sunny day, this is a popular path with families, with walkers, with cyclists, but in the gathering gloom of a winter's afternoon, this can be a very inhospitable place. And the question remains, of all the places in the world that David Litton could have gone, why did he come here on the last day of his life? His family have been informed. A full inquest will take place in March, but it's possible some questions may never be answered. Damon Green, ITV News in Greater Manchester.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, going back to space. Peake on accepting his next mission. And another hero of the skies, the huge petition to get a knighthood for this former dam buster.
I'm astounded, but I'm extremely grateful that people should be so interested.
All those stories and more after the break. Join me then. Welcome back. The British astronaut Major Tim Peake has announced he is to boldly go on another mission to space. He's planning to return to the International Space Station to carry out more work. Today, he was reunited for the first time with the tiny capsule that brought him safely back home. Our science correspondent Alok Jha was there too.
Here's what happens when you fall through the sky at 17,000 miles per hour. This is a Russian Soyuz capsule, its skin burned and torn apart by the Earth's atmosphere. And here's why. After it detached from the International Space Station, the capsule scorched through the skies above Kazakhstan last June, with Major Tim Peake and his crewmates, Yuri Malenchenko and Tim Kopra, inside. They'd been in space for 7 months. This capsule absorbed the ravages of their hair-raising ride home. Today, unveiled in the Science Museum, Tim Peake saw his spacecraft again.
Honestly, since I landed in Kazakhstan, this is the first time I've seen it. So.
On the same day, the European Space Agency announced that he'd be getting another flight into space. So what does he want to do on his next mission?
There's always new science going on. That's the great thing about the space station, is it's constantly evolving. The first mission was a wonderful success, and the view from planet Earth is the one thing that is just always so awe-inspiring to see. So I would just continue to take lots of photos and to try and get as many people engaged in the mission as possible.
It's hard to tell, but it feels like a lot of water.
As the first British astronaut in the European Space Agency, Tim Peake always said he wanted to inspire a new generation of scientists and engineers. In his talks and appearances since he landed, it's mission accomplished.
I want to be an astronaut because it would be really fun to go up in a rocket and then come down as a burning ball of fire.
Won't you be scared though?
Yeah, but it'll also be fun.
It's not yet clear when Tim Peake will make his next journey into space, but he knows that he'll get to experience the feeling of being cramped inside another Soyuz capsule not too far in the future. Alok Jha, ITV News.
Now, at a time when sports stars seem to be getting ever younger, in tennis, the old guard have staged something of a comeback. At the Australian Open, 35-year-old Roger Federer has become the oldest Grand Slam finalist in 43 years. And 36-year-old Venus Williams is the second oldest female finalist in history. Richard Pallow on the return of the golden age.
There it is.
It is often the sweeter when you least expect it.
The long wait is over.
2 slices of tennis nostalgia served up in Melbourne. The megawatt smile of Venus Williams back and brighter than ever. Roger Federer reliving days that pretty much everyone agreed were behind him. Close your eyes and you could believe it's a decade ago. But this is 2017. This is the Australian Open, where experience outweighs everything. Venus Williams first reached a major final in the previous century when opponent Coco Vandeweghe was at primary school. But Williams is through to one again, as is Federer. A man who could barely walk a few months ago. Even he thought that here there was no chance of adding to his 17 major titles. But now he's in the showpiece too, after a grueling 5 sets against Stan Wawrinka. And at 35 years young, Federer is the oldest men's Grand Slam finalist since 39-year-old Ken Rosewall at the US Open in 1974. Venus Williams is 36, her first major final for 8 years, the oldest ladies finalist since Martina Navratilova strode onto Wimbledon's centre court, aged 37 in 1994. And the revivals do not stop there. Venus is now to face her sister Serena, while Federer might yet line up against Rafa Nadal. Rivalries from the past reawakened down under. Richard Pallow, ITV News.
A bit of news just in. The former Scottish Labour MP Tam Dalyell has died, it's been announced. The 84-year-old was an MP for more than 40 years, representing West Lothian and then Linlithgow, and was father of the house. A family spokesman said he died after a short illness. And finally tonight, the heroics and bravery of the dam busters have been immortalised in song, on film and in print. But some think they haven't been sufficiently recognised by this country. And today a petition was presented to Downing Street calling for the last surviving British veteran to be knighted. He told Paul Davis it would be for all of those in Bomber Command who never made it home.
And this is actually the plane, your Lancaster.
He is 95 years old now. But George, Johnny Johnson, remembers the night of May the 16th, 1943, like it was yesterday.
We dropped on the 10th run.
The 10th run?
We're down then to 30 feet.
Wow.
The then 22-year-old Johnny Johnson was a bomb aimer. What he and other members of the 617 Squadron accomplished, immortalised in the music of the Dam Busters March, helped turn the Second World War, using the experimental bouncing bomb developed by Barnes Wallis to breach dams and flood Germany's industrial heartland.
I didn't see the explosion, but Dave did from the rear turret, and he estimated the water went up to about 1,000 feet.
73 years later, there's growing pressure for the last British dam buster to be knighted.
I'm astounded, but I'm extremely grateful.
As a petition signed by 200,000 people was handed into Downing Street by television presenter Carol Vorderman and RAF Gulf War veteran John Nichol, Johnny Johnson said the honour would not be for him alone.
If I may be permitted to dedicate that to the memory of the 55,573 Bomber Command people that gave their lives in the service of their countries.
Johnny and the Canadian Fred Sutherland are the two last surviving dam busters. The petition calls for heroes to be acknowledged before they're all gone. Paul Davis, ITV News.
The remarkable Johnny Johnson. And that is all for now. Tom Bradby's here with news at 10, but from me and all the team, have a great evening. Bye-bye.